everybody. So we are now on lesson number 9 of our still life course that we've been doing. So we've looked at lots of different things, foliage and doing our own setups of still lives and looking at lighting and painting techniques and so forth. So I've taken a little bit of a twist with that today because I don't know where it came from, but I remembered that there's an artist that does sweets, exclusively does sweets as her subject matter, and she does lots of very close-up pictures of sweets where she looks very closely at the reflections, the highlights, the colors involved in those quite well-known sweets that we all love. Most of us love. We all love. So we're going to have a look at some of that this evening. The artist name is Sarah Graham, and I've got a I'm going to show you a little clip of her talking as well, where she just talks a little bit about her work. And then what I thought we'd do, if you've got your sweets with you this evening, is we'll take a photograph of some sweets. Now I've already done this for you in case you didn't have sweets or you didn't have time to get anything together. So if you go to the art website, on there's a button and there's a folder that says Jamie's Sweeties, and there's loads of photos. Well, loads. There's a good few photos that I took today of some Haribo sweets. So if you haven't got a subject or you haven't got any sweets and you want to do this evening, then you can get the sweet pictures from there or take your own. But I'm going to talk a little bit about taking your own photos and things using your camera. And then we're going to spend the evening drawing those out and perhaps adding a little bit of colour with colour pencils as well. And then following that up next week with working into them with a little bit of paint perhaps. So let's have a look at some of the work of Sarah Graham before we get started this evening. Here we go. Right, so here are the examples of Sarah Graham's work. She's quite a famous artist, really, or at least at the school that I work. We often use this artist as a subject matter for students who find this sort of thing obviously quite interesting. It's very pop art style, and she exaggerates the colours. And also she, I think she says in the video that she tries to exaggerate some of the blurs and things that naturally occur when you take a photograph. So let's just zoom in on one of these. I don't know which one I've got here. That one, there's a lolly. Let's have the lolly. Let's have the lolly one. Bring it right up to the top there, and here we go. So I really like this because of the amount of detail that she uses in the image. Now it's called photo, I think she calls it photorealism. So it's kind of exaggerated, realistic, if you like. So all of the highlights, the shadows on the packaging itself have been painted in and exaggerated, and the colors are very in your face and hot and things like that. So really beautiful techniques that are applied to create this work as well. And then I wanted to zoom into the jelly babies actually, because that was quite an interesting one for me. Let's just see if I can get hold of the jelly baby. There it is. Right, move that one up. So let's grab hold of the jelly baby and zoom into that one. So get right in close, you can almost see like the brush strokes and things, the way she's built it up. So there's these really, really strong and bright highlights on the top, which brings out a lot of the detail. And then you've got the darker shadows inside of the kind of the jelly form, if you like, where all the shadows and this sort of glassy effect occur. But the other interesting thing, actually, which I hadn't thought of until now, is that we've got the reflections of the objects on sort of a reflective surface like a mirror or perhaps just a shiny surface. So we've also got that effect within this one as well. The interesting thing about this as well is that we're not just looking at the shape of the jelly babies itself, we're also looking at the shapes that make up those shadows and highlights. So on that blue jelly baby you can see, or gummy bear in the middle there, we can see these dark blue shapes lapping around the outside of its paws, and then the mid sort of tones in between it, and then obviously we've got the super highlighted areas on the top as well. So we've got dark, mid-tone and highlights really clearly painted in order to show the details. Okay, so I thought today we would start by using colour pencils to sort of find these shapes and things. And then perhaps next week work back into them with a little bit of paint. So we'll see how that goes this evening. I'll show you a couple of the photographs that I've collected now, or that I've made. So let me just turn this on. So here's one example. I think I took this one last Friday when I was at the art class in Brawns. So you look at this photograph and it's, what you can do in actual fact is you can pile up your sweets, you can lay them out in order to create a composition or an idea. This one in particular has got jelly babies and one of those heart-shaped things and an egg right up there in the background. But what makes it feel like it's further away is the fact we've got this we've got these blurry effects towards the back. So obviously painting or drawing those things will require a much softer approach, and then as we move forward towards the front there, we've got much more detail and sharper, harder edges on there as well. So we're going to be looking perhaps a little bit of that as well. Let's just let Nina in. There we go. And now, apart from making piles of things like this, you could also try, if you wanted to, and you want to isolate those objects a little bit more, you could do this. So take a few of your favorite sweets, line them up like this, whether they're in wrapping or out of the wrapping, it's entirely up to you. But we'll begin by drawing the shapes of all these objects before perhaps adding some tone using the colours that you see in the picture to do our tone and shadow. So drawing out first, drawing out the outlines, and then adding in the shadows and things like that. Okay, and there are also, interestingly, shadows underneath the objects which give them this sense of place and weight on in the composition as well. So have a bit of fun doing that. Now, one of the things that's interesting as well is that, as I mentioned, Sarah Graham exaggerates things. Now, the colours on here, yes, they're colourful, but we could exaggerate them further using our camera phones, which is why I put that on the list of things to bring this evening, because obviously these days you can take a photo, you can get really close up, like on this one, and then you can change the settings. So you can make things darker, lighter, you can add more colour with saturation. You can also bring out the highlights. There's so many great things you can do with a camera these days that will help, the phone camera, that will help you create this like uber sort of intense feeling in the image there as well. I'll just have a see if I can find that chop that one there. Call it a chop. What are they called? Chup chops or something? Chopper chops. No, let's just bring it forward. Just wanted to have a quick look at that before we go over to the desk. So there's one of these. You see on here we've got one of those rings on my photograph. Here's the intensity of the colors in here. So you can really go to town with these colors, but got the really bright colors and really strong highlights on there, which are perfect for painting. Sarah Graham uses oil paint, I think, in her work, but you can still get these effects with things like acrylics and things if you don't have oils, and I'm not starting to use oils this evening. Okay, we're going to use colour pencils. So I am going to show you now a short clip where Sarah, she's a lovely lady, she's very bubbly and everything and smiley. So I'm going to show you a video of her just talking briefly about work. The video is about 11 minutes long, so I'm only going to play a little bit of it, but we'll have a look. There she is.
Hi. So my name is Sarah Graham and I am a photorealist in that I work from photographs, but I do endeavour to really enhance the image I work from. So I exaggerate colour, I exaggerate focus and blur to get that real three-dimensionality. I try to create something which is almost super real. My ideas come from all over the place, whether it's stuff from my own childhood, wandering into a sweet shop, scouring a market, eBay. I've got an endless supply of ideas. If anything, I'm actually worried that I'm not going to live long enough to paint them all. Ideas are not an issue. Plenty of them.
Don't use bullet points in a presentation. Look, if you're responsible for driving new sales into a business, you are.
Sorry about that.
Well, I've been painting a really long time. I started using oil paints when I was 8 years old. So it's been developing ever since then. You know, we're talking 36 years. And I kind of consider myself self-taught, even though I studied fine art at university. Didn't really learn anything about painting techniques. We were kind of left to our own devices. So it's something that I've learned through looking at other photorealists, peers on my degree. They would often give me advice and tips, and like I say, the whole process of how I work is something which I myself have developed over the years. So I always say on average a month. That's for something around the size of this piece behind me. Because usually my work is around a metre or so square, or portrait, landscape. But so I always say a month. I mean, sometimes they've taken me up to 3 months. I can do very small pieces in a few days. So yeah, it does vary, but kind of in my mind, I have that kind of idea that it's one piece a month.
Right. Okay. I hope you enjoyed that. I mean, I think it's always really enlightening to see the artist, to actually see the artist talking about their own work, and you get a sense of who they are and why they paint the things that they do. And obviously their personality comes through as well. So I thought that her personality really went well with the subject matter and the colours and everything that she uses in her work. So I thought it's a great subject for us to do this evening. So as you can see, I have got loads and loads of well, not loads and loads, but I've got a few of these Haribo Star Mix. I did actually have another packet of these, but I thought I put them safely away. But my dog came along and ate them. So I had to go out today to buy a few more. My dog's absolutely okay, and he enjoyed them very much. So anyway, so we've got our sweets here, and you can start thinking about how to create a composition using these. And you saw the examples that I did before. So the thing to do is have your camera phone out. So let's find my phone. Now, the great thing about these phones, of course, as you know, is you can get in really super close with these cameras nowadays without having to do too much, really. So I'm just going to create a small arrangement of some of these things, and you'll find yourself kind of fiddling around trying to get things in an interesting position, which is very much like what we've been doing with our subjects. My mouth is watering looking they smell so lovely. Right, so I've put a few of the sweets out here. So I've put some here, but I've also got some towards the background, so I can have perhaps more of a blurry effect on some behind it. So then what you do is you have your camera on, you get down quite low. So rather than maybe just going like this, you could try all sorts of different angles on the sweeps. One of the things to watch out for is casting your own shadow or the shadow from your phone when you take the photo. You could also experiment with the lighting, of course, so you could add extra lighting on the picture. You might even be able to put your torch app on your phone on. Now, if I get in nice and close, I'm going to just try and find an interesting angle. So here we go. Now, sometimes if you tap your phone, it also adjusts the lighting a little bit so that it'll automatically adjust the lighting on the picture. So there we go. And if you remember earlier, I was also talking about lining them up or trying also. There's lots of different things, of course, that you can do, as Sarah mentioned in her video just there. Right, so I've taken a picture on my camera. Let's see if I can get in a bit closer to it. Right, without the lighting all over it. So I'm going to go over to my camera phone over here, and let's see if I can edit it. Right. It can be a bit fiddly, of course. So here's the picture that I just took, which I think could be quite interesting to work with. So the next thing you need to do is think about editing your photo. Let's see if I can just sharpen that a little bit. I may move around a bit. Right, so that little dot in the middle, that's my finger pad thing. Right, but you can see the photo up there quite nicely. So what you want to do next is edit your photo. So by pressing edit, you'll be given options such as, cropping and so forth. So I'm just going to crop it in slightly. And you'll notice often that when you go to edit, I don't know if you can see that on here, it brings up the rule of thirds. Now the rule of thirds is really useful when it pops up like this on the crop tool, because the lines on the rule of thirds are the things you want to consider where you consider having an object on the lines themselves. The crossing over points in the middle of the rule of thirds is where you could have something in particular you would like to help either balance the picture or draw the eye. So down at the bottom here, I've got this little ring just there, and the rule of thirds lines cross over just where the ring comes round to the whatever it is, the diamond or whatever. Okay, so then you can click. So if you're happy with that, on my phone at least, you can swap to filters. So on here, filters is represented by some 3 circles. So if we go across, you can start changing the lighting of the photo. So look how that's changed the reds to pinks on there. So I'm sure everybody's come across this sort of thing before, but it is really useful. So don't like that one so much. That one's quite nice. And then I can adjust it a little bit as well, but it's quite nice like that. And then I can adjust the light balance to make things lighter or darker overall. And what else have we got? Oh yes, there's a little sun, which is usually for brightness or darkness. So I can add a bit more tonal range in there. And contrast, like that, just there. So I've now got an image which is much brighter, more vivid, and gives me more of a tonal range on here as well. So once you've done that, you can save it like that. Now you could, this is what I do quite a lot when I'm doing illustrations or drawings or paintings. I sometimes work from the phone because it's quite nice working from the phone, because you can see the image quite small, you can see the overall shape of everything, where everything goes, but you can get right in to that detail. So on that little cola bottle, look, the detail on there is really nice. So I can get right in there and I can see things, and I can zoom back out and I can see other parts of the picture in a bit more detail. Even the if you remember, I said I was going to have some blurry bits in the background. I can see how soft that is. There's even a little reflection from the green of the jelly baby or gummy bear on the surface there as well. So that's quite a nice composition that I could work from. Right. So if you've got I assume most of you have got a camera, that you'll be able to take some photographs that you can work from this evening. I've already got mine. I've printed one off. So I've got a couple here actually. So this one here, so it's not particularly good photos. I printed it off my on my inkjet printer. But if we look at these two here, so this one is completely unedited. So we can see all the colors and everything like that. It's a bit dull and things, but once I've started to work onto it with the filters and the settings on the camera, then printed it off, I've got something much more vivid that I can work with this evening. All right, if you don't have a printer, work from your phone, or if you haven't got any sweets or whatever, find some of the photographs that I put on the website. There's a button there. You can go straight to the folder and find the pictures that I took. Download those. You can even download them onto your phone, and then you can work from them that way. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I want to start drawing. I'm not going to eat all of these sweets. I'm going to put them in this bag and save them for Friday. But what I suggest everybody does this evening is start by making a drawing of your photograph. I'm going to be drawing this one out this evening onto, I'm going to do it onto some smooth watercolor paper. So it'd be good for pencil, as it says here. And then I can also start applying some paint or watercolor. I can use pen on it as well if I want to. But I'm going to mostly just use colour pencil this evening. I'm going to, sorry. And then go into the paint a bit later. Okay, right. So I will drag my photo on here as well, if I can find it. But I hope that makes sense to everybody and everything. But if you've got any questions about what to do and how to do it, oh, here you go. Whoa, it's huge. Because I took this one just before we started and started playing around with the settings. Just make it a bit smaller. There they are. Look at that. Beautiful. Enough to make you want sweets, isn't it? I think. See if I can just rotate it around a bit. There we go. Right. So I think that's the right way around, isn't it? Yes, it is. Yes. So I'm going to be working from this, especially when I come to using the colour. And I'm going to try and exaggerate some of the highlights and shadows on there as well, like I already have with the camera. But I'm going to be drawing that out onto the paper before I start working with the pencils. and I'll talk a bit more about the colour pencils and things when I come to them. But the first thing, the main thing, is to draw out all the shapes in as much detail as you can. Keep it light as well, the pencil marks, and then move into the colour. Okay, now with the pencils, it's going to be about layering colour as well, as opposed to it's red, let's just colour it in red. So layer the colours on top of each other as much as you can as well. So if I started with putting in some colour for one of my sweeties, I can use line perhaps to show the shape of something, and I'll explain that as well. So this is a cross hatching with the pencil, and then if I wanted to add another colour into that, of course I can do that in a very similar way too. And there might be some deeper colours and things like that that you want to apply. So you can use line very much like one of the pieces that I've shown you a couple of weeks ago to build up the layers of colour like this. The other technique, if you want to go a bit smoother, would be to, rather than cross hatching, you could use the side of the pencil and apply the colours more softly. I really like using line, so I'll probably be doing a bit of that and mixing it with a bit of the side of the pencil technique. This, and if you work gradually rather than going in heavily straight away, you'll find that you can control the colours much more and build the layers up. It's quite nice working with the side of the pencil actually, because you'll see a smoother finish appearing very quickly. We have here, and then you can also use some white perhaps to make things really nice and smooth. So I've got this Chinese white just here. So if you work back into a colour with some white, you can blend the colours beautifully, make a really smooth finish like a lot of these sweeties we've got here are, and then reapply your colours back over the top. So there's very much this layered approach. You might decide once you've got started that you'd like to just focus on one of the sweets with the layering and so forth. Like that. Okay, so we'll try a few different approaches like that too. And I'll talk a bit, other things that you can use are things like which I've talked about in previous lessons, but you can use something called a blender, which will help if you've got the colors on the surface of your page. You can, particularly if you've got good pencils which is soft, you go over the surface with a blender and it pushes all that color into a smoother surface texture. So this is a Derwent blender we've got here, and we also have other materials, other things as well. I've got my blender. There's a burnisher as well, which I've got just here, which is kind of similar really to a burnisher or a blender, sorry. All right, so I'm going to be, I'm going to be sketching that out for a few minutes, first of all. But does anyone have questions about what to do? All right, So you'll see here what I'm using is the photograph that I printed off earlier. I've also got the photograph of my my sweets on the screen. You can see the difference between the photograph on the screen and the printout. And I do refer back to this whilst I'm drawing. But I'm using the photograph to help me map out all of the shapes of my Haribos into a grid. So you remember I talked about using a grid to take your photographs or to crop your photographs, and then to put the interesting things on the crossover points of those lines on the rule of thirds. So you can see the heart shape on my printout there. The crossing over points on the bottom left hand corner are where the heart is, and then the top one is where the little gem thing is on the ring, and so forth, and the cola bottle, and then the other hearts on the other side. So we've got this kind of use of the rule of thirds to help divide the space up. So here now you can see that I've already drawn out the whole thing, and knowing the kind of form and the shape of my my heart here, you can see that I'm using curved lines and vertical lines to help sort of map out the structure, or do a little bit of modeling, if you like, of the object, the heart. And now I'm just generally bringing in a little bit of tone using the red pencil. So we're going straight in, no underpainting this time. Now I do actually go a little bit too dark in this picture that I'm drawing, but the effect is okay. And what I wish I had done perhaps a bit more is apply red a bit earlier, but we're still able to layer back over the top with the red and get a pretty strong red towards the end. So I've used a little bit of brown just to bring in that tone in there. I could have used a darker red looking at the photograph on here, but I was going on the photograph that I printed out a little bit more, so ended up being a little bit darker than the photograph. And you'll see one of the things to point out is how much layering there is of the different coloured pencils. So layering being the really important aspect of using the pencils to get the smooth texture on here, and also the deep colours as well. Wish I could draw this quick. And then I start to think, well, our artist that we've been looking at today talked about how she exaggerates everything. So I'm adding some stronger highlights on here, which I do actually reduce down and bring back again at different points. But it really helps to emphasize the form. The highlights against the shadows there help to really bring out the shape of the heart that we're focusing on here first of all this evening. And I talked a little bit during this about how there's a little bit of yellow perhaps reflected from the ring that I've just started on the top of the heart. So I've used a bit more yellow, or I will do. And then definitely within this sweetie, there is kind of orangey, sort of yellow ochre browny sort of colour, I guess. So I started just generally working my way around there with that tonal range first, and then coming back in with the yellows. Again, I feel it's a little bit dark, but it's pretty good to show you what I mean about layering all these colours over each other. And I do actually add in some white around the base. That yellow at the bottom of the ring is particularly bright, so I bring in a little bit more yellow with some paint But next week I will be painting another one of these for our last lesson in the series. It should be a lot of fun because we'll be able to really get into the blending, I think, the paints. It'll be interesting to see how that works with acrylics. Should be a lot of fun. So again, you can see with this, I've applied a bit of green, but then I've come back in with yellow. And here I'm adding just a little bit of tone. Now I really do like using purples and blues for shadow, so I've used a bit of purple and blue. I'm adding white as well to soften the colours. And again, we can see the form and the shape of this ring starting to pop out as well. So this lesson went really, really fast. Everybody commented how quickly it went. So it's really nice, you know, when you get the chance to really focus in on something like this. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this evening. We'll do a little bit of painting on this next week. So I'll move away from the pencils and work with the paints and experiment a bit with that as well. So I just keep going and going, and you do spot quite a lot of things that you perhaps missed earlier on. And it's lovely to tinker around with those colours and see what happens when you apply a bit more and remove a bit with a bit of white. So you're burnishing, I burnish a little bit of white over the top to soften the colours and then apply the colours back in again. So thanks very much for this evening, and I hope you enjoy the video. Enjoy working with sweets, and I'll see you next lesson. Bye.